Welcome to Del Beccaro and Hook. I am Steve Hook. There's my partner, Tom Del Beccaro. We welcome you to another exciting episode of Del Beccaro and Hook. We've got a great guest today, Craig Shirley, coming up. Wonderful author, wonderful man. And we've got a lot to talk about, Tom. Last week we were touching on the rapidity with which Donald Trump is getting stuff done. It shows absolutely zero sign of slowing down. I mean, as I said last week, we're going to need a bigger show, and that holds true today as well. I mean, the stuff is just ridiculous what's coming down the pike so fast. Let's see. In the last week, what has happened? Well, we've gotten some hostages home. In one day, President Trump brings in Elon Musk with his son X into the White House. And basically, Elon gives a crash course on abject governmental corruption and payouts and all kinds of schemes going on. And as if that weren't enough, mere hours later, he's welcoming home Mark Fogel with a White House welcoming home ceremony, and then he puts him up in the Lincoln bedroom. I'm like, goodness gracious, this guy's just done, this is one day. I mean, not even one day, half a day he's done all of this. And it continues. What strikes you is so as being so amazing this past week, Tom?
Well, that he's doing both foreign policy and domestic at the same time and racing ahead in both areas. You know, some presidents are domestic presidents, some presidents are foreign policy. I'm sure we'll get into the totality or the style of Trump with our guest, Craig Shirley, who the distinguished Reagan author, 7 books on Ronald Reagan, and we're going to draw those parallels. But for me, it's the fact that he's doing both and moving ahead so quickly in both areas. And of course, the flip side of that is the Democrats. They can't get any traction, and they continue to be in disbelief, I think. If we could throw up the meme of the week, folks, we're doing a new thing, the meme of the week. And Steve, I love your comments on this. Here it is: Democrats furious, Republicans trying to control government just because they won an election. And Trump's, the Democrats, the saviors of democracy. I don't know if you remember, Steve, they were trying to save democracy for you.
Yeah.
They can't seem to come to grips with the fact that they lost an election and now policy is changing. And they're screaming that, no, you're not allowed to do this. And the Babylon Bee, which is just hysterical and great publication, says it all right there. They won't accept that they lost and think that, and are still fighting the election they lost, whereas Trump is running miles ahead.
I mean, and it's just so amazing to watch, because the second they go after one thing, he's already on to the next and then the next. I mean, so you're right. He doesn't give them a chance to respond. And when they do respond, Tom, it's a response that seems so, it smacks of desperation, because they find themselves defending the indefensible. How do you defend millions of dollars for sex change operations in Guatemala? Well, you can't defend that, but they're forced in the position of having to defend it. How do you defend DEI training in Sri Lanka? Same thing. They can't defend it, but they have to defend it because it's all about tearing Trump down. It's not working this time around. I suspect the Democrat Party is going to be hurting it for a long time now, because I don't think that they're ready to say, you know what, the AOCs and the squad, this whole tact is not working for us. They've been captured by that movement, and they don't seem to be hell bent on getting away from it, which is the first thing I would do. So either you change your position or you change your party. And at this point, I don't know what's going to happen. It's pretty scary for them.
I've written over the years about how, after the Democrats lose an election, they move farther left. And when they lose an election, it's their moderate members who lose, right? Nancy Pelosi doesn't lose. Excuse me. It is their moderate members. And so, again, if you look at who populates the Democrats, it is this old guard, the old guard that were in the confirmation hearings, the Maxine Waters of the world. But even their youngsters, Steve, AOC is very committed hard left. So again, they're not going to wake up and go, oh, so we're the party of government. We believe in socialism, but we're going to change to get elected. Not this particular group is going to do that, which is why I wrote, I think they will be in the wilderness for a while. We'll talk about this with Craig Shirley, but I think they're like the Labour Party in England the last quarter century. They win elections when the Conservatives fall down. And of course, that's the warning for Republicans.
Yeah. I think that I think that you're right. When you talk about the younger members, you mentioned AOC and some of the squad members. But the problem with it, Tom, that I see is that if you take a look at this last election results and you look at where the country's going, it doesn't matter that they have been captured by the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars of their party. They've lost their bases. Their once impenetrable block of voters is abandoning them in droves, and none more so than younger Americans. Younger Americans have openly rejected what they're trying to peddle, and they're peddling it twice as hard. I've never seen a party more out of touch with where the will of the American people is than the Democrats are right now.
With interesting changes. Look at the state of New Jersey, where you reside, and I spend an enormous amount of time these days. What, in January, 20,000 more Republicans registered than Democrats. You've lived there a long time. How's that dynamic in your mind?
Well, I tell you, I've always lived in the reddest part of the state, which is Central Jersey, Monmouth, Ocean County area. It's gotten redder and redder. I'm seeing more people with Trump flags in their yard, on their cars, whatever. And this is, you notice it. There's no question you can notice it. And I don't know that the Democrats notice it. I think that if we kind of look at what's going on in the world today with regarding Doge and all of this, they're petrified of what's about to come out. I think they are absolutely mortified about what's the old adage about, if they start screaming, you're over the target or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But they are raising hell about Elon Musk, not because he's unelected, not because he's not doing the job in the executive branch that President Trump hired him for. They're petrified because he's about to reveal the crown jewels, which is their grift. And they are mortified of that. I think there's probably some Republicans, by the way, in that tranche of corruptocrats as well, it should be said.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call those crown jewels. It might be something else. What was in the Al
booty
Capone safe? Yeah, what they were doing. Again, I think they're one trick ponies. And what I want to go back to New Jersey. As you know, everybody or people, I married a Jersey girl. And she kept telling me, and she's conservative, she kept telling me, look at all the flags. Even among the Democrats, they have flags. They're not California liberals, right? And so we're up there in around the Morristown, Livingston area, the Caldwells, and I don't see the evidence of hardcore left there either. I see people who just want to be left alone and want to work. And you mentioned the younger generation, they want jobs. They don't want to live in their mother's basement. Remember, they did that. The statistics under Obama were ridiculous, how many were living in their parents' home. They want to be out and about living their lives. And I think that's what's facing them now. Plus, they like strong leaders too. The world likes a strong leader. They did, and Biden was. Could you imagine, seriously, if somehow Biden was in there another 4 years, or Harris was in there at all? Nothing would be going on. No,
except for a lot of grift, a lot of corruption, and the borders would still be wide open. You're right. I think results speak for themselves. And when people see the results, They have to acknowledge that, I may not like this guy's temperament. He may be a little bit. I don't want to say braggadocious, but he's certainly in your face about it. And I think that's what a lot of people don't like about Trump. But then they look at the results and they're like, goodness gracious, we went from having 4,000 immigrant, every day being apprehended or at least acknowledged by ICE and the Border Patrol to having less than 300. I mean, that is a massive turnaround.
Overnight. And hostages coming home that America didn't even know were being held outside the country.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty amazing. And so now they've been reduced to talking about we have to save the Department of Education. Oh, and look at the egg prices. That's where they're at, and they've got nothing else. I mean, I would say I almost feel bad for them, but I don't feel bad for them at all.
Well, it's hard to feel bad for them because they put America in such a position, with the help, by the way, of some Republicans, some who are still unwilling to support President Trump's position. But if he continues to race ahead and produce these results, I think you'll find that it'll be. It's cool to be Republican now. I see MAGA hats in New York City when I'm there, which is something you wouldn't have seen.
I would say this: if you want to know who the guilty ones are, and I don't mean to cast aspersions here, but look at the ones that used to be on the media all the time. They've really kept their heads down. You don't see Lindsey Graham much anymore, do you? Now, there's certain things about Lindsey I like, but I think that he's probably up to his eyeballs in a lot of this stuff, and Doge is going to find out. Not to mention Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is now getting around in a wheelchair after his fall last week. He voted against RFK Jr. Hell, he's voted pretty much against all of them. And now, and of course, the Democrats are going to scream and kvetch all they want. I don't think it's going to get any traction, but boy, Trump is on a mission. It's really fun to watch. It's almost too much to take in. I'm sitting there doing show notes, and I'm like, well, that's an old story. That happened 8 hours ago. We're on to something new. It's crazy. Listen, that's going to do it for this segment. We've got a great show, as we mentioned before. We can't wait to chat with Craig Shirley. He's our guest coming up on the other side. We take a very short break. We remind you, find us at DellAndHook.com, DellAndHook.com. Pass it around, bookmark it, share it with your friends, and we will continue with Del Beccaro and Hook right after this.
Welcome back, everybody, to Del Beccaro and Hook. I'm particularly pleased today to have with us distinguished author, multi-time bestseller, knows American history so incredibly well, the one and only Craig Shirley. 7 books on Ronald Reagan, including the Reagan Revolution, the untold story of the campaign that started it all, and Rendezvous with Destiny, Ronald Reagan and the campaign that changed America. He also has best-selling books on World War II, and also one on Newt Gingrich. And he is currently, as we found out, working on 3 books, but one that will grab your attention is on Donald Trump and the 2024 election. So everybody, please welcome Craig Shirley. Craig, thanks so much.
You bet.
For coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the reason why I wanted you on, both Steve and I wanted you on, is I think this is a very interesting moment. I think people forget, because Reagan was so successful, how much resistance there was to the likes of Ronnie Reagan when he came to Washington, D.C., and he charmed them and succeeded. And we see a lot of resistance to someone coming into their party, meaning Washington D.C.'s spending fun, and once again we see this resistance. So I wanted to hear from you. What parallels do you see? What lessons should be learned from Reagan as they apply to President Trump?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? Is what Donald Trump is doing and what Reagan did. You know, the sobriquet, the first 100 days really started with FDR, then it continued with Ronald Reagan, and now it's Donald Trump is moving with such alacrity. It's more like the first 100 hours, not the first 100 days. It's a great way to keep your opponents on defense, and it's a great way to control the agenda. And it's a great way to sell your position by staying in motion. That's what politics is, motion. And Donald Trump is a study in motion. I think he understands that acutely, as did Reagan, as did FDR. A stationary target is easy to hit. A moving target is much harder to hit. And Donald Trump is moving so quickly, and I think wisely too. It's really astonishing. But you know, I was thinking about this, Tom. Is that so, a sports writer once said, sometimes the better story is in the loser's locker room. And we haven't focused enough on the wreckage of the Democratic Party. They have been reduced to defending corruption and abortion. That's what they're all about. And I don't know if you saw the recent polling, but I was astonished that the Democratic Party is totally tanked with the American people. It's now at what, 54% disapproval and only 32% approval. I've never seen that in my lifetime. The Democratic Party was in such a sorry shape. And I don't see, they're so controlled by special interests. I don't see how they go back and they retool the party. You know, the only way they can get ahead is for the Republicans to screw up. But I think if Donald Trump keeps moving ahead and keeps getting hostages out when Biden couldn't get hostages out, when he finds waste, fraud, and abuse. He's already found billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse that Joe Biden couldn't find. That he's securing the border and deporting illegals when Joe Biden couldn't. He's done everything Biden failed on. And let's be clear. Biden will go down in history as our worst president. He was weakling. He couldn't get anything done, and he was corrupt. It was just the worst of all worlds. You know, Jimmy Carter is now resting assuredly in heaven, because no longer is Carter going to be referred to as the worst president, because Carter, he failed as president, although he needs more credit on the Camp David Accords and introducing the concept of human rights to the national debate. But Carter was not corrupt. Carter was honest as the day is long. Whereas Biden was the head of a Biden crime family. I'm going, this is a long-winded, winding answer, Thomas, so I beg your pardon.
No problem about it. So what Reagan, the initial resistance to Reagan, how did his team, and he had, I think, one of the best teams in presidential history, how did they rise above that and speak directly to Americans? Because
Reagan did the same thing. He kept moving the ball down the field. He kept staying on offense, whether it's on tax cuts or on standing up to the Soviets or on SDI, on issue after issue after issue. Reagan was also in motion. And you're right about his team. Many of them are friends of mine. Most of them I've interviewed over the course of, written 7 books on Reagan. And I've interviewed, many of them. The one group that doesn't get enough credit is the speechwriting shop. He had, with the exception of John Kennedy's, with the exception of the one speechwriter for John Kennedy, is that Sorensen. Reagan had the best speechwriting shop in presidential history. There were really some marvelous, marvelous people. Peter Hannaford and Ken Kachigian and Mary Mossing Will and Aaron Bakshi and so many others really did, because his speechwriting shop was not just a speechwriting shop, it was also an in-house think tank and was an incubator of thought. And of course, Reagan himself was a marvelous writer, so he interacted well with marvelous writers. Presidents and executives and other individuals tend to attract people like themselves. FDR attracted good political operatives because he was a good political operative. Richard Nixon attracted political hacks and conmen and crooks because, unfortunately, he was a hack and in many ways a crook. Jimmy Carter attracted incompetent individuals because he himself was incompetent. JFK attracted intellectually curious individuals because he himself was intellectually curious. LBJ attracted cronies and thugs because he was a thug. And the same thing holds true with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was of high IQ and high accomplishment, and was about pure conservatism. And so he attracted a staff that many of the staff, not all of them, but many of them were like him.
Yeah, and Craig, it's really wonderful to see you, Steve Hook here. Following up on that logic, then President Joe Biden attracted grifters and corruptocrats because he was a grifter and a corruptocrat.
Precisely. I mean, precisely, yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So now we've got Trump making. I mean, and Tom alluded to the fact that Reagan met a lot of resistance, and there's certainly some truth in that from the left and from his own party when he got in there. The Ford Bush brand of the Republican Party wasn't very fond of Reagan, obviously. Nope. Reagan did the magnanimous thing and made George H.W. Bush his VP. In retrospect, to the long lens of history, that may not have been the wisest move, but you know what? No. It all worked out in the end. How do you think Trump is going to fare with regards to the long view of history with the people that he surrounded himself in his second term?
I think with the right historian, history is going to be very kind to Donald Trump. With the wrong historian, like a Michael Beschloss or John Meacham or Doris Kearns Goodwin, they're not going to be good to Trump because they themselves are members of the establishment, members of the status quo. They're ultra leftists. They're from a different culture. That's what this election was really about. Many elections are about Republicans versus Democrats or liberals versus conservatives. This election was about them versus us. And them is the intelligentsia, the insiders, the status quo. And Donald Trump represented the revolutionary thought of new ideas and not accepting that which was been prescribed by the intelligentsia. So that was what this election was really about. It reminds me of the election of 1828 with John Quincy Adams versus Andrew Jackson, and 1980 with Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan. They also were a clash of cultures with the outsiders versus the insiders. That's probably an oversimplification, but it was that's how this election manifested itself. He is a threat. The Washington, the Politico, the Washington Times, or the Washington Post, NBC News, all of them represent the old order, the old establishment, the status quo. And so he's a threat to them. So that's why they attack him. That's why because they don't understand him. And now they're really angry because guess what? He's succeeding where they failed. They failed for 4 years. Joe Biden was a failure. Like you said, he was a failure and he was a crook. Whereas now, and because he's succeeding, he's bringing people over to the Republican Party and driving people away from the Democratic Party. And hence, I think we're in for a period, possibly a long period of Republican governance.
Yeah. So in other words, the Democrats may be wandering the political desert for at least a few election cycles because of this.
It's very, very, very possible. But, both of you asked me about this resistance that Reagan ran into, and I didn't articulate that enough. He had resistance from his own party. When he ran in 1980, he had 7 different opponents running against him: George Bush and John Connally and Bob Dole, and all of them. Bob Dole was a very good man, but he was in many ways a member of the establishment. Connally certainly was, but George Bush was Mr. Establishment. And then during his time in office, he had many Republican opponents and certainly Democratic opponents in the guise of Tip O'Neill and the liberal Democrats, and the establishment with the media. Now, he found an effective way to go over their heads and get national time to talk to the American people, and that's how he got ahead of the game with the establishment. But they were at him every day, you know. And like I said, it was the Republican Party then wasn't all conservative as it is today. It was probably 70% conservative, 30% liberal. And those 30% liberals were very vocal and very animated and very, you know, Bob Packwood and other liberal Republicans just were at Reagan all the time, you know, personally and politically and ideologically. So he had to deal with them, but he came out obviously the winner because he knew his ideas were better than their ideas, and you know, if Reagan did many good things, but the three most important things he did was to defeat the Soviet Union, was to restore the American economy and created something like 18 million new jobs. And the third thing was the restoration of the American morale, because he knew happy people are a productive people, and happy people produce the weapons that he could use to grow the economy and the weapons he could use to stand up to the Soviets so that they would do exactly what he said. He said in the 1980 campaign, I want to build up our defenses and force the Soviets to the negotiating table. And that's exactly what happened.
So, so much to talk to you about. I just wrote a piece. No, I just wrote a piece. Trump seems poised to seize his Jacksonian democracy moment, comparing the election between John Quincy Adams and this election. I'll send that along to you. And I'm just so disgusted with Beslash and the rest of them. I don't think you can be an historian and have a preferred outcome. You can't be objective if you're saying, I want this outcome and therefore I like the people that bring me to that outcome. That's not I realize we all have biases.
You're absolutely right, Tom. That's polemics. That's not history.
Yeah.
So in that regard, you talk about the right historian, but also it's the people inside. Michael Deaver was a wizard, as I'm sure you'll agree.
I knew Mike very well, yeah.
I'm concerned about the marketing of what's going on today, and particularly with regard to Doge. Obviously they're finding all of this corruption and the like, but I have my father was a international marketing executive, and so I have an osmosis degree in marketing, listening to him for so long. But it's a simple thing. You don't sell the product, you sell the benefit of the product. The sizzle, not the steak. And I put out a tweet, I don't know if we're able to put that on the screen, which we talked about earlier in the show. But I said simply this, that EPA found the 20 billion sitting offshore, which is the equivalent to over 800,000 Social Security recipients pay for an entire year.
Right.
I think they should sell this as, you know, the benefits of what they're doing, not what they're doing. Can you comment on that?
No, I think that's a brilliant idea, and that Reagan always understood that too, as did FDR. It wasn't just the WPA or the CCC or whatever else. He pitched it as with his fireside chats and other frequent press conferences. As now, it didn't work. Let's say this: the New Deal did not work. He was not a great president because of the New Deal, although trying is important and helping American morale is important. He was really a great president because of his stewardship of World War II. He assembled, he was very wise. He assembled the greatest gathering of military generals since the time of Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Is that, you know, I mean, think about it. You had Patton and Nimitz and so many others. It's just astonishing. But that's why he is regarded as a great president. I went off on a tangent, Tom. I'm sorry, but you're exactly right. It's about how to sell these things. The benefits, not the action, but the benefits. And Reagan did that too with, like, for instance, SDI. Keep Americans safe and safe and secure was how to sell SDI, not the system itself, but driving from that the benefits of the system. The benefits of tax cuts will help the American people, and the benefits of government reform will help the American people, and the benefits of now Donald Trump is doing that on the border. He's doing that quite well, I think, on the border, selling the American people on being safe, because they've all heard the stories about illegals raping and killing these innocent young women in the country. And, people are scared. People are just scared to death. And he is doing a good job selling it as what the benefits are of a secure border and a fence, and having a good immigration system, as opposed to just opening up the border to anybody who wants to come in from any country in the world, like Biden wanted to do.
Absurd. I wonder, when we think about Reagan, of course, Reagan was the great communicator. It seems that Trump is the great doer. I mean, he's getting stuff done. You mentioned the first 100 hours. You're not wrong. It's almost too much winning to keep up with. What I also, and I'm kind of curious as to your take on this, Craig, is that at least in Reagan's day, he had Scoop Jackson. At least in Reagan's day, he had people on the other side of the aisle that were somewhat moderate.
Exactly.
The aforementioned Scoop Jackson.
Precisely.
That Democrat Party is dead and buried.
Gone.
And it seems like they're in the process of burying their new party, because I don't know, they haven't gotten the message. What is it going to take for them to understand the will of the American people? Or do they just not want to because they're going to take it in the purse strings?
That's a lot to answer there, Steve. Is that the Democrats are, like I said before, held hostage by special interests. And the only thing that is the solution for losing is a come to Jesus meeting, when you realize it, because I think they're going to, if things being equal, they're going to lose the next couple elections. And then they're going to have a meeting like the Republicans did. They gravitated away from big government republicanism toward conservative populist republicanism. And that's what taught them how to win. None of these things are islands. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they're not islands, they're streams. And so, Robert Taft begot Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater begot Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan begat Donald Trump. But the real start of the transformation of the Republican Party started in 1964. The Republican Party prior to that had practiced ticket splitting, which Reagan always attacked, although he did undertake it in 1980. But for instance, in 1952, the moderate Eisenhower takes the conservative Nixon. In 1960, the conservative Nixon takes the moderate Lodge. In 1964, the conservative Goldwater gets the nomination, but he doesn't take Javis or Rockefeller or Scranton as his running mate. He picks a little-known conservative congressman from upstate New York, Bill Miller, as his running mate. And in so doing, Bill Miller is probably more conservative than Goldwater, but he begins the process of driving out liberal Republicans out of the Republican Party while attracting conservative Democrats to the Republican Party. So over the years is that the liberal Republican mayor of New York, John Lindsay, becomes a Democrat, whereas the conservative governor of Texas, John Connally, becomes a Republican. And that continues. And of course, McGovern accelerated the program. And so by now we have two totally separate and distinct political parties. The Republican Party is almost all conservative, and the Democratic Party is all liberal. They're Boll Weevil Democrats and Reagan Democrats are gone because they switch over to the Republican Party. There used to be an overlap between the two parties. There used to be liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. So there was an overlap. So at least the two parties were talking to each other and compromising. That no longer exists. And don't forget Newt Gingrich's contribution here. It's very, very important what he does in '94 with the Gingrich Revolution. It's very, very important. But what we have now is two distinctly different parties, and the only way to get things done is for one party to completely control government, as Donald Trump now. He controls the House, he controls the Senate, he controls the Supreme Court, many state governments, not all, but many. And the AG's filing lawsuits are just, they're just, whistling past the graveyard. It's a nice PR stunt, but they're not going to go anywhere because ultimately it's going to end up the Supreme Court, and the court is going to decide, and most likely on Trump's behalf. So that's where we are today. Is that? But not only is the Republican Party almost all conservative, it's also politically, it's also changed the culture. And it's because of the force of Trump's personality, because of the condition of the country, which is bad, and the condition of the world, which is bad. And the third thing is the hyperspeed world of communications we live in today. And Trump understands that. That's why these daily press conferences, help move the ball down the field. Reagan didn't have the internet to contend with, or cable TV, and FDR didn't have TV. He had the radio and daily newspapers. But now everything moves so quickly that politics has to move quickly to stay up, to keep up with things. And Trump understands that. The Democrats don't understand that. They've been saying over and over and over, Donald Trump is against corrupt government. Yeah, Donald Trump is against corrupt government, but it puts the Democrats and boxes them in.
Yeah, no doubt. We just have about a minute left. I compare the Democrats to the Labor Party now, and once socialism grabs a hold of a party, it doesn't let go. And they could be in this wilderness unless the Republicans fail to deliver. The Labor Party won the last election, not on its merits, but because the Conservative Party stopped delivering. Exactly. And so the last question we have for you today is, Trump has unusual loyalty for a political figure, but who's ever next does not have that loyalty, certainly not yet. And so they not only have to succeed, but they have to find the next leader. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to be J.D. Vance. It's not going to be any moderate Republicans, any liberal Republicans. The Lincoln Project is dead, as it was corrupt anyway, but now it's dead. I don't have, I wish I had a crystal ball, then I'd make the right stock picks.
You can borrow Nancy's.
I beg your pardon?
I said you can borrow Nancy Pelosi's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I could be an inside trader and be a crook just like Nancy. Of course, I wouldn't have a soul. Okay,
actually, Craig, we gotta wrap it up. I gotta say, I completely enjoyed this. Someone who writes history books. I'm coming over, sitting on your porch, and I'm gonna listen to you for hours on end, if you don't mind.
Anytime, fellas. Hey, I'd love to see that piece on divided America you wrote. I would really love to see that, because I've been saying that for years, that America is more known for its division than for its unity.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. The one and only Craig Shirley, distinguished authors. I could have done this all day, but we can't. We'll see you back in just a moment.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Stephen.
Welcome back to Del Macaro and Hook. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Man, Craig Shirley, what a sharp mind he has. By the way, we want to remind you before we jump into segment number 3 here, you can find us on X America News. Don't forget patriot.tv/DHED. Of course, Rumble, YouTube, all the usual spots. And of course, our homepage, delandhook.com. We air our show live every Saturday, 7 p.m. on those platforms. So remember that, bookmark that, 7 p.m. every Saturday. You can find us on X American News and Patriot.tv and all the others. Tom, what a breath of fresh air Craig Shirley is. You can tell that he's kind of giddy about what he's seeing as well. And I mean, for a guy he's a prolific author. I got to think, and it's no wonder to hear he's got 3 books kind of in the works all at the same time. He's going to have a lot to write about, man. I'm telling you what, it's amazing what's going on. Yeah. I want to let's dive into Doge a little bit, because Doge is what's freaking them out, Tom. And I maintain that they're scared because a lot of them are going to get caught up in this. But one of the things that Doge, and this is just kind of goes to the point. I'm reading a story. This is off the main wire, but it's all about Doge investigative digging into this stuff and seeing where money's going. Get this. I'm just reading from the article. Following the humiliating retreat from Afghanistan, the Taliban, an Islamic fundamentalist movement known for violently discriminating against non-Muslims, women, ethnic minorities, and homosexuals, assumed complete control of the country. In addition to seizing billions of dollars worth of U.S. military assets, of course, that's when the disastrous exit from Afghanistan happened. A new report found that the organization also quickly moved to open more than 1,000 nonprofit organizations. This is the Taliban he's talking about here. While the nonprofit advanced themselves as promoting human rights and humanitarian causes in Afghanistan, they were largely front groups that allowed the Taliban to secure massive tranches of taxpayer dollars under the supervision of the State Department officials in the U.S. How much money? How about $239 million? So not only have we given them billions, 87 billion thereabouts in up armored
direct aid,
everything. Yeah. And direct aid. Now we've given them another 239 million for quote unquote humanitarian causes, which is not what they're all about at all.
Well, and what article is that? Or our readers, is that on?
This is on Main Wire, Main like the state, MAINE wire.com.
So
yeah,
look, it's, what are you trying to say, that they didn't really give him 50 million for condoms and into Hamas, that they were actually funding them? Yeah, I agree. I think you said earlier that they're either worried that they're going to be caught up, that they did some of this, or that they just, they have no other thing to say. I really liked what Professor Shirley, I'll call him, talked about moving forward. When I was chairman of the California Republican Party, I used to say, look, we're going to make mistakes, but always move forward. It's much better to be shot from behind than to be shot in the face.
Yeah.
And so Trump is totally leaving them behind, and they can't. We saw the meme of the week where, again, the Democrats can't accept that they lost the election. They're still fighting as if they're arguing about the election. And then, of course, they're going on personal attacks, right? Demonization. That's their gig. And Musk is their target. They say this is what, he wasn't elected. There's 537 people who get elected at the national level, 100 senators, 435 House, president and vice president. That's who gets elected. But the executive branch has a couple more people than just those two. Their own staffs, every one of those Democrats' staffs, they delegate things to get done on their behalf, but no one elected them. And then, of course, this driving of the wedge. And as we show this next clip coming up here regarding, this dynamic, even CNN at some point had to admit that, maybe there's less to this story than meets the eye.
We wish there were. You want to see that clip?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with the clip.
There was a joint interview that Trump and Elon Musk have done with Sean Hannity. We saw part of that tonight on whether there's any friction in the relationship between Trump and Elon Musk. This is what they had to say.
Actually, Elon called me. He said, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. No, they said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, It's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because if they were good at it, I'd never be president.
What was remarkable to me about that was not even what he said, but it's just they're doing an interview together. I mean, the president of the United States doesn't often sit down with anyone else for a joint interview.
Unorthodox, non-traditional. I don't sense the tension that, the soap opera, writers want to draft up in D.C. Trump has surrounded himself by smart, rich, powerful people for 50 years. He's quite comfortable.
Yeah, there you go. By the way, CNN trying to recover by having actual Republicans there that have dealt with the real world versus what Democrat reporters that they usually keep there. But there's the reality of it. You're doing something different and it can't be done. Elon Musk can't do any of this, can't uncover any of this because, and they can't finish that out because, tell me exactly what he's doing wrong, because there's no evidence that he's actually looking at people's social security checks. What he's trying to do is save their checks, which brings me to this next point. And if we could put up my tweet from yesterday or the day before up with regard to how they're marketing Doge. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. But my point in doing this was that you have to tell people how it affects their lives. And I often said this in my speeches over the years. Almost nobody knows what $1 billion is, right? They can't see it. They've never touched it. It's unrelated to their lives. Here we have the EPA $20 billion slush fund they find parked offshore through Chase Bank, blah, 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 right? And what I wanted to do was tie it to human beings. That's a year of Social Security benefits for 895,000 people. That's what was about to be wasted. That's the threat to Social Security. That's the threat to Medicare. And in my view, and as Craig Shirley agreed with me, they have to market this better as it affects real people's in their lives.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And I loved your line about selling the sizzle, not the steak. It's absolutely true. And you should do that. I think that one of the problems that the Democrats is having with this is that it's such an avalanche of information. I mean, goodness, since we've been on the air right now, since we've just been chatting, Fox has got a new top 5 most shocking revelations found by Doge. Now, there's a way to sell this, Tom. But the thing is it almost speaks for itself. The Iron Mountain nightmare, where they found out that people, if you work for the government and you want to retire, guess what? And this sounds absurd. Somebody in the government has to take a freight elevator down about 300 feet into a cave and manually handle this paperwork. So it takes forever. Then you've got Doge-inspired EPA located the $20 billion in waste that you were just referring to. $20 billion. DHS has clawed back $59 million for money that was going to New York City to house immigrants up in 4- and 5-star hotels. Now, I would just say this. People say, well, why would they do that? Why would these hotels do that? I'll tell you why, because they're getting paid twice the rate that they would if it were you and I staying at this hotel. It's amazing the amount of waste and abuse, and they don't want to touch it. The Department of Education is going to be just loaded with grift. I have no doubt Treasury is loaded with it. Pick your government agency. You're going to find billions of dollars in waste there, Tom.
Yes, and not just that they are redirecting money or lying about where it's going, but as you point out, with regard to the hotels, way overpaying.
Yeah.
And paying consultants to handle things and way overpaying them. And again, at the end of the day, we have 36 trillion current reasons why this has to stop. That's the national debt. And it can't go to 50 and it can't go to 70. We have to stop it and reverse it now, which is, I put a post on Facebook, my wants. My wants are, I want to be safe. So that's not only policing, but the border. I want government to be smaller, and I want the economy to grow, which go hand in hand. And I want justices that don't make up the law, that apply the law. I know we've run out of time here, and you're going to wrap it up, but I'm happy so far, and it doesn't matter who gets the credit for it. I mean, yes, Trump gets the credit for it, but I don't care who gets the credit for it. I just want to be safe and have the economy grow for people.
Yeah, well, here. I agree. And I'm sure next week we'll have all kinds of new revelations to discuss. But listen, folks, we thank you for joining us today on Del Beccaro and Hook. Just a quick reminder, DellandHook.com, DellandHook.com. Don't forget X America News. You can find us there. And of course, patriot.tv/DHED, Rumble, YouTube. And remember, every Saturday, 7 p.m., you've got Del Beccaro and Hook. And until next time, goodbye.